Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the It's the Pictures podcast. It is episode 176. I am your host, Max Colville, and joining me today is my co-host, Evan Crean. Hi, Evan.
Hey Max, how's it going?
Going pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah.
We are getting into the end of the summer movie season and into cooler days. I can already see the seasons turning here in New England,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm looking forward to all the the prestige films and kind of snooty films that come out this time of year. There's already been announced full slates from festivals like TIFF and New York Film Festival in Venice, and famously, Telluride does not announce their lineup until people are landing in Telluride. So we'll see what they have in store as well. But yeah, I'm excited for some of these high tootin' films as opposed to like some of the summer movie fare. Uh, do you have like a preference for these prestige films? Do you find them like kind of too obnoxious sometimes, and you try to pick out the gems? How you feel?
Well, I always look forward to award season and getting a chance to kind of catch up on movies, especially ones that I didn't see earlier in the year. But I'd be lying if I said sometimes it wasn't a bit challenging when you're talking to colleagues and like, well, what are the movies you should see? And then you get the recommended movies that critics love, and sometimes I just groan because I'm like, oh, that movie sounds like such a chore to watch. So there's definitely some in there that I'm like, I know I should watch it, but it's gonna be a struggle to get myself to sit down and actually watch it.
Oh, absolutely. I'll use this one as a simple example. Last year, one of the must-see foreign films was The Zone of Interest, and that's something you got to like gear yourself up to watch because you're like
Mhm.
on paper, you're like, I don't know if I feel like I'm in the right headspace to watch this,
Oh,
and
totally.
it
I
could be
didn't end up
brilliant.
Yeah, and actually didn't end up seeing it until after we voted for Bafka last year. And I was kinda kicking myself because I really thought it was an incredible film, even though, like you said, you kinda have to emotionally gird yourself for watching a movie like that.
Right, and certainly, like usual, we have a wide gamut of films. There's some that kind of straddle the line versus commercial and artistic, if you will. If we have the Joker sequel coming out this year, and
Mhm.
certainly other films by auteurs and the like that we'll talk about soon. But to talk about some films that are definitely not by auteurs. D23 happened, the Disney conference. You would think that Disney had shared all its news after Comic Con and announcing the Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom thing.
Mhm.
They certainly had more trailers and information in store for audiences. They showed more of the upcoming Moana 2 and Mufasa, which is the prequel to The Lion King that came out a few years ago. And that one is actually directed by Barry Jenkins, which makes me a little bit more excited than I would be otherwise.
Mm.
Some of the other sequels were uh confirmation that we're gonna see a Toy Story 5, and they had Woody in the
Ugh.
teaser trailer, so like I guess I gotta find some way to get Woody back in the crew. And
Mhm.
uh Frozen 3, more confirmation on that coming in 2027, and uh more concrete details on Tron Ares, the new sequel in the Tron series. And this time
Mhm.
they've announced that Trent Reznor's Nine Inch Nails will provide the soundtrack.
Ooh,
So
I like that.
yeah, I mean, like that was like one of my favorite things about Tron Legacy was the Daft Punk soundtrack. So
Mhm.
as long as you give me cool light cars and light motorcycles with a cool score, maybe I'll be okay. Even though this one stars Jared Leto, so
Yeah,
it's
grown.
yeah, it's a big stretch.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking at the rest of the cast though. Gillian Anderson, Evan Peters, Jodie Turner-Smith, Greta Lee, who I really like. I feel like she's people are really starting to take notice of her. I'm excited about the rest of the cast, even if I'm not excited about Jared Leto.
Yeah, and then another thing that they showed, Evan, was another trailer for Star Wars Skeleton Key, and that is the new Star Wars show that's coming out. That's kind of looks like Star Wars meshed with Goonies because it like follows uh like children as the leads, and I guess like some people were like it's weird to see like suburbia Star Wars universe, but like
Mhm.
that's what it looked like. And I think Jude Law is one of the well-known actors in the show. So Disney had plenty of things to excite shareholders with.
Mhm.
Well, what do you feel about like? I mean, obviously, it is just for shareholders and to put on a big show of like what they're doing in the future. It's like, but you when you hear dates like 2027, you're like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, totally. It's hard to think about movies that far out. And it seems like within the last, I would say, decade or so, there's more and more of this where you know the release dates of things like years in advance, and it's like who the hell remembers that's at a certain point when the movie is going to be coming out. Like I'm not setting a calendar going, oh great, in 2027 in January, XYZ movie is coming out. I don't remember that. I'm not going to remember. And I usually keep good track of release dates of movies. As a podcaster, it's important to know what's coming out when. But yeah, it's kind of nuts that they they announce these things so far in advance, especially when they end up pushing the release day out. Like, oh, that's coming in 2025 instead of 2024. Like, really? Oh my god.
Yeah, and I was talking to my wife about the Frozen 3 date and like how it will be 8 years since Frozen 2 came out when the sequel comes out, and it's just like, oh, they're making it so like they get a whole new generation of children of each new
Mhm.
Frozen movie as opposed to like releasing sequels 2-3 years apart. In other news, another new project that was announced that might be getting off the ground was a Anthony Bourdain biopic starring the holdovers Dominic Sessa.
Ooh.
He was the young man who in the holdovers, and like he was a newcomer for that movie, but I thought he was really good. Certainly the trifecta was excellent in that, and uh, he's attached to that project, and also attached is the director of Blackberry, Matt Johnson, and I thought Blackberry was hilarious.
Yeah, I
Maybe
dug Blackberry.
yeah, I don't. It was funny. There was like three of those like technology um movies that came out at the same time. It was like Tetris, Air, which was about the Jordans, and then it was Blackberry about the Blackberry phone, and uh
Mhm.
I liked BlackBerry the best. I know there's a lot of people who were like, "Oh, Air was had a lot more like A plus star power and stuff." Viola Davis, of course, and Ben Affleck and what have you. But uh, yeah, I really enjoyed BlackBerry.
Yeah, I liked it too. I would say of those 3 movies, I think Tetris was my favorite, and then I liked Air, and then Blackberry would be more like 3rd place for me in that list.
All right, Evan. There was some passings, big acclaimed actors recently.
Mhm.
One of them was the late Gina Rawlings, who was famously married to John Cassavetes and appeared in many of his films, including A Woman Under the Influence, which I'll talk about later. And it's unfortunate, like many headlines said, the actress of The Notebook, like that was supposed to be the thing that audiences remember her by. That might be easier for audiences to hold on to because it's the most recent like high profile thing she did, but it might be unfair just to say like that's her legacy. I know there were some other actors and actresses, like specifically like Carrie Coon, who wrote on social media that she believed Gina Rawlings deserved better than just the actress from The Notebook.
Yeah.
I know that you watched The Notebook recently when we did that Ryan Gosling episode. What did you think about her in that movie? And have you seen some of her other works?
I mean, I thought she was good in The Notebook, even though The Notebook was a terrible movie. But I actually ended up seeing a movie with her in it, that I'll talk about in the what we've been watching section called Night on Earth. It's a Jim Jarmusch film that's a anthology movie about like people riding around in cabs in different cities, and so she's in one of the segments. I ended up watching that, and I thought she was good in that too. So I feel like those are the only two things I've seen of hers that I like can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I like Jarmusch films too, so I haven't seen that one, so I'll be looking forward to your thoughts on that. And just this morning, we learned that the French actor Alain Dion passed away. He is famous for working on films such as like Purple Noon, where that was the genesis of the talented Mr. Ripley story. Well, I think it was. I think it actually was an adaptation of this of that. I think it was based on a novel, but he was also in this other famous movie called Les Samurai, which I've been watching the 4K release that just came out in July from Criterion. Whatever, La Piscine is a movie that was remade by Luca Guadagnino as a bigger splash.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I liked
yeah,
that movie.
yeah, so that was his remake of La Piscine. And yeah, what's great is that if you have access to the Criterion channel, and maybe if you listen to this podcast and have listened for a long time, you are interested in that. They have put up series on both Gina Rawlings and Elaine Dion on the front page, so you can pick out a few films from each of them if you're unfamiliar with their work and catch up.
Nice, I like that.
Other than that, we have the summer movie bet, Evan, and
Yes, we do.
the last of our movies made its debut in theaters. Maybe not many people know that Borderlands came out, but it did.
Yes, it did. It didn't
uh,
do well. Hasn't been
no,
doing well so far. I
uh,
mean, currently Maxine has made more money than it.
yeah, and
I'm
it's
sure it costs a lot more to make.
yeah, I think its budget was over 100 million or something, and
Oh, that's brutal. That's
yeah.
brutal.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big disaster. Uh, but Deadpool and Wolverine continues to do amazing business. I think I read recently that it has passed Joker and become the biggest R-rated film of all time. Um,
Cool.
I don't know if I expected that when the movie came out. I mean, who could expect that kind of box office? But we knew it was going to be big. I mean,
We did, yeah.
uh, Evan picked it as the number one overall movie for the summer. Its only competition was another Disney film, Inside Out 2. Whether or not it eventually surpasses that, we'll see. It would be crazy to me, Evan, if it does, just because
Mhm.
Inside Out 2 is like this family film. Everybody could go buy a ticket to go see it and feel pretty good about it. But like, I guess Deadpool Wolverine, from especially from what I saw in theaters, it's like that one has also been playing like a family film, which is crazy. And yeah, pulling in the big bucks.
Mhm. Yep. Thank God I picked it. Otherwise, I would be in way worse shape than I am. I'm still losing pretty badly in this bet, but for Deadpool, I'd be in dire straits.
Yeah, Evan, and go figure. It's like some of the stuff that's come out recently that's done pretty good. It's like It Ends With Us, the Blake Lively romance movie, is
Mhm.
already at 97 million in its second weekend. So that's
Damn.
a massive breakout success for
Should have
that.
picked it.
Maybe. No, I think that was the big surprise
Mhm.
there, because like Trap came and went, the M Night Shyamalan film, which uh it I thought that might have had a chance to do a little bit better than it did, but It looks like that's gonna wrap up too. Long Legs, the neon horror film, that did excellent this summer. Its total gross right now is at 72 million. When and you look at
Wow.
that, if you look at that compared to some of the other stuff we have on our list, like uh, at least what 4 or 5 times more than Maxine did, and
Mm.
I would not have anticipated that at all.
So, like I said, sometimes horror does well. I just didn't hitch my wagon to the right horror.
Right, or like if we look at the numbers, Evan, it's like It Ends With Us is already grossed more than The Nice Guy, which is crazy considering not The Nice Guy, The Fall Guy. It was positioned as this great big beginning of summer movie, and it just didn't connect with audiences. Too bad. I hope people find it either streaming or on Peacock because I think it's a pretty enjoyable movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually still been meaning to watch it. Hopefully, I'll get to it soon.
Alrighty, but that is summer. Maybe we'll give you the audience maybe one more update on the summer box office next time we meet. The numbers won't change much, I don't imagine, unless
Yeah,
Deadpool Wolverine does like a few 80 million weekends, and I think that those weekends are behind it. Uh,
probably.
but we will continue forward and start our conversation about the fall and specifically the fall festival season. Normally, I used to do these with John ahead of my departure to go to TIFF. TIFF is, I think, the first weekend of TIFF is September 6th. So we're getting pretty close to that. I think Venice is the week before or a few days before. As I've mentioned before, Telluride and even New York Film Festival, which is like mid to late September. Um, and even less Fantastic Fest announced their slate too. So there's a lot of festivals happening this time of year.
Mhm.
Even I think it's like late October this year is the IFF Boston Fall Fest, and for our listeners in the Northeast, specifically Rhode Island, Boston area, Massachusetts rather. Uh, that is a great opportunity to see some of these movies that are at these big festivals in our local theaters because the programmers of IFF Boston do a great job of pulling some of those movies into the theaters a little bit early for everybody, and um, it's just cool. I know
It
like
is.
I know,
Mhm.
like, even though I've gone to TIFF for a lot of years, there's not exactly a one-to-one overlap of the other festivals. So, like, oh, if there was something at New York Film Festival that I really wanted to see, it's nice to be able to see it there.
Yeah, Brian and Nancy, who run the festival, they do an amazing job of getting these films and selecting them and getting them, and that, as you mentioned, is a great opportunity, that fall festival, to catch some films that likely are gonna be in awards contention and see them, before often they're gonna be released in December or January or February, so it's a good opportunity to, like, get a jump start on seeing some of those movies and being able to talk about them before other people.
Yeah, and certainly we will talk about some of the films we're excited for at the different festivals. I went ahead and listed a whole bunch of films that I was particularly interested in, and shared them with Evan ahead of the podcast. I'm sure that he'll find some stuff that he was kind of interested in as well. But one I'm gonna start with a little bit odd one, Evan, and this one is playing Venice and New York, and I think it was announced as like a late addition to TIFF.
Okay.
And TIFF famously plays like these films that play Venice like a few days after opening weekend. Like to get in the nitty gritty of the TIFF programming, the first weekend is really for their world premieres and like the special stuff that's gonna be like shown only at TIFF. And
Mhm.
then like come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they start being able to show the stuff that maybe played at Venice or Telluride. And I remember famously, like, I don't stay all the way to like Tuesday or Wednesday and just like being upset that like I didn't get to catch those films because they kind of hold them for them. I remember specifically, I think it was like the Banshees of Inisherin was one that I missed when I had to fly back from TIFF, and I was like, oh, I ended up going to like a Boston screening, but um, yeah, that's how that festival normally works. And this film in particular is directed by Brady Corbett. It's called The Brutalist, and I guess like the runtime is outrageous for a film festival. If you've never done like film festivals before, it's like, oh, you want to try getting as many films as you can while you're there, and like
Yep.
maybe do some ideas of like maybe not the stuff that's coming out in September, maybe stuff that's later. But The Brutalist is 215 minutes with a 15-minute intermission built in there, and I'm just like, this is gonna be a lot. And for those who don't know director Brady Corbett, he directed the film Vox Lux a few years ago, which
Oh, that movie?
yeah, that movie was a lot too. Uh,
Mhm. Yes, it was.
so I don't know. The people sitting for this film will certainly be into a long, heavy film. This one stars Adrian Brody, Guy Pearce, and Felicity Jones. And I'm gonna give a small summary of the movie, courtesy of New York Film Festival. Um, According to their programming guide, they say in this towering vision from American director Brady Corbett, an accomplished Hungarian Jewish architect and World War II survivor named Laszlo Toth, played by Adrian Brody, reconstructs his life in America, reconnecting with his family in Pennsylvania. While he awaits news of his wife's relocation from Budapest, fate leads them into the orbit of the volatile Harrison Lee Van Bruin, played by Guy Pearce, who's an obscenely wealthy captain of industry who leads him to both professional success and personal chaos.
Hmm.
It's a richly detailed recreation of post war America, hopeful and nightmarish. uh, it says interweaving a provocative tapestry of ideas around privilege, money, religious identity, architectural aesthetics, and the persistence of historical trauma. Yeah, it doesn't seem very light, Evan.
No, it certainly doesn't. It sounds good though. I mean, I like Adrian Brody, and this particular story sounds interesting. They started to get me at provocative tapestry of ideas, as loath as I am to say that, um, because I think that just sounds pretentious as hell. I like the idea of commenting on privilege, money, religious identity, architecture, trauma, the immigrant experience. All these things actually sound really interesting to
I'm
delve into in a movie.
I'm glad you say that because sometimes, like, I read the back of Criterion movies, and if you've listened to this, and I've already mentioned Criterion, I'm in the bag for Criterion. I love them, but like sometimes
Mhm.
you read the synopsis of the movies, and you're like, "This is just word salad. This doesn't mean shit." and you're
Yes.
and you're like, "Yeah, you're trying to tell me this movie is like a masterpiece, but in so many words of like, uh, just ridiculousness."
Mhm.
And I don't know. That's the movie industry for you.
Yeah, well, they gotta market the movies. They gotta get butts in seats, right? They wanna get you interested in seeing it, so they gotta write these kind of in-depth plot summaries.
Yeah, and like for people who didn't see Vox Lux, that was like with Natalie Portman, and she's like the crux of that story is like it begins with a school shooting,
Yep,
and she ends up becoming like a pop star due to a song she wrote for the school shooting. So
right.
that I was like, that was a bizarre movie.
Yeah, it was. I was not a fan of it. It was one of those very controversial movies that year when it came out. You either loved it or you hated it, and I was in the hated it camp.
All right, Evan, I'm excited to hear maybe what you're interested in.
Joker Folie à Deux, that's coming that's playing in Venice, right? So we get the Joker sequel. That's what it's a musical, right? That's the idea behind this one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like that's how they've built it, and this idea of Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. I mean, certainly if you're gonna have a musical, good idea to bring her into the fold.
Yeah, I've seen that their plot summary is while struggling with his dual identity, Arthur Fleck not only stumbles upon true love, but also finds the music that's always been inside him. Oh man, you want to talk about a pretentious phrase? The music that's always been inside him. That's right up there.
Yeah, so famously, like Todd Phillips is directing this one once again, and
Mhm.
uh if you haven't watched Joker recently, or like you're like you didn't have this background of what Joker was trying to do, it like famously uh kind of apes a few different Martin Scorsese movies, whether it be like
I
Kings of Comedy or Taxi Driver. What we got, Evan?
Oh, no, I was just about to agree with you heartily that I would say it is a huge ripoff of King of Comedy. I remember at the time watching King of Comedy and then watching Joker and thinking, "This is just a naked like, just nakedly ripping off, like, so much from King of Comedy," and I remember at the time seeing Joker and thinking it was highly overrated. I don't know about you.
Yeah, my experience my experience of seeing Joker was wild, Evan, because it was it came from Venice to TIFF,
Mhm.
and everybody wanted to see it at TIFF because it won the Venice Golden Lion, which is the highest honor at Venice. So
That's
not only
nuts to me.
yeah, not only was it already this big commercial film, but it was also like, oh God, it played, it won an award over all these other prestigious films, and it was definitely going to be like an awards player at the end of the year and what have you. So everybody tried to see it. I remember like I got into like a P&I screening of it, and I was like maybe 10 minutes late getting in because they tried to fit me in wherever I could. And I was like a row from the front of the screen and like looking up sideways at it. I was like,
Oh,
it was like a horrendous viewing experience of that movie. But
that
like,
sounds rough.
yeah, I was like, I think I thought it was okay. Like I did appreciate Joaquin Phoenix's performance in it, and like given all the actors who have played Joker, that's it's tough to like think of, to do it justice now, right? Because like,
Mhm.
oh, Heath Ledger did such a memorable performance, and uh even though it was, now you could see it as like kind of hammy, like Jack Nicholson did a good performance of it, and Mark Hamill famously does the voice for the cartoon, and that is pretty memorable as well. So
Yep.
uh,
Love Mark Hamill as the Joker.
yeah, to see someone else come into it and try and make it their own, um, that was always going to be weird to see. But on another note, Evan, it's like the Joker also directly had De Niro in it. So I mean,
Right?
like they they knew exactly what they were doing, and I've seen the trailer for the sequel like once or twice, and like even like a new trailer, and it's like they're recreating like the scene where Joker's like going downstairs dancing or something like that, but this time with Lady Gaga, and it just made me roll my eyes outside my head. I was like, why are you just rehashing things? Like, oh, I don't know. I I whatever happens, this movie's gonna make a lot of money because there's people who were really excited about Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of Joker, and just the character of Joker itself is big money maker. He's a big high profile character for Warner Brothers and DC. So
Mhm.
um I guess what I'll be interested in is if it has the same power and movement that like the first one ended up having on audiences, and then like getting it all the way nominated for best picture, or if people be like, oh yeah, we did this once and we already gave Joaquin Phoenix best actor for it, and
Right.
we don't
Yeah, if
really
they're
need,
see if people are over it.
yeah. Yeah, it has a great cast outside of the Phoenix and Gaga. Brendan Gleeson, Catherine Keener, and Zazie Beetz is. I guess she was also in the first Joker, I think, and
Yeah, she was. Mhm.
she'll be back for this one. Okay. I will go ahead and mention one of my most anticipated movies of the year, Evan, and this one is a TIFF world premiere. Hasn't been announced anywhere else that it's playing. This is Mariel Heller's Night Bitch, and this is based on a novel starring Amy Adams. According to the synopsis, Amy Adams stars as a woman thrown into the stay at home routine of raising a toddler in the suburbs, who slowly embraces the feral power deeply rooted in motherhood as she becomes increasingly aware of the bizarre and undeniable signs that she may be turning into a canine.
Ooh.
Yeah, I I like the premise of it, and like this idea of like just trying to hang on to motherhood wherever you can. Obviously, uh, I am always going to experience motherhood adjacently, not being a mother or a woman myself, but as a fellow caregiver to a young child, I can kind of have some sympathy towards that role.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I hear you as a, new parent myself. Um, not a stay-at-home parent, but I do work from home and I, get to see my kid a lot and take care of her. So, this definitely sounds like an interesting premise. And yeah, Amy Adams, I think she can be good. She's a little hit or miss with me, but I like Mariel Heller. She did gosh, what was it, that movie with Melissa McCarthy,
Yeah, can you
right?
ever forgive me?
Yes, I thought that was an excellent film. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's like one of the best. And I apologize for this ahead of time, but I love when comedic actors take on more serious roles and do that type of thing. And I loved watching McCarthy do that movie. And um, outside of like maybe her work in Bridesmaids, I think like that was probably her most memorable performance.
Oh, for sure. Oh, and I didn't realize she also directed A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which I really liked as well. So, I'm okay. I'm on board.
You're on board for Night Bitch.
Yes, I'm on board for Night Bitch. I felt weird saying I'm on board for Night Bitch, but here I am.
All right, Evan, you have something else in mind?
Sure. Yeah. I am very interested since we're talking about TIFF still. I'm very interested to see Anora, Sean Baker's next film. I know that won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Um, so yeah, I mean, I liked Red Rocket fine. What else? The Florida Project, also liked it. I like his social commentary on like class, and I feel like just I don't know, this movie just sounds really interesting to me and layered. It's about a sex worker from Brooklyn who meets and impulsively marries the son of a Russian oligarch. And then, once they find out in Russia, they send like goons out to get them, right? And try
Yeah,
to get the marriage annulled.
yeah.
So it just sounds really interesting.
Neon has released the first trailer for that one, and there was a lot of hype around Mikey Madison's performance in the movie. I'm not familiar with her work otherwise, but
Oh yeah, I know her. She was on I've seen her in a few things. Recently I saw her in the Lady in the Lake, which is an Apple TV show. But I knew her best as playing one of Pamela Adlon's daughters in Better Things, and I thought she was good in that. And I liked her in Scream when she showed up in that. Um, so yeah, I know her a little bit.
was that
And
it was she in both the fifth and sixth Scream, or is she
oh, she was just in the fifth one.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm not too familiar with her and those properties that you mentioned. I haven't actually seen, but apparently there was raves upon raves for her performance in this, and um, it's funny. Like I really enjoyed Sean Baker's Florida Project and Tangerine, but a little bit less so on Red Rocket. I don't know if it was just the subject matter or the life he chose to follow, but I wasn't as high on that film. But uh,
Yeah, it's not an easy person. I mean, he's not someone you really wanna root for. He's kind of a dirtbag, the
yeah,
lead in that movie. Um, but I like what he's going for. I like that Sean Baker, in the past, I've seen him, make very, like, local stories and that feel very grounded and often looking at, slices of life that other people aren't necessarily, examining. I mean, there's movies that examine sex work, but I don't think they probably are always as honest or kind of raw as it seems like he is, willing to be with his films.
yeah. But yeah, that currently has been announced as being shown at TIFF. I forget if it was also announced for New York. I'm sure it's gonna play uh, Venice. Venice Telluride when they find out the slate, because Neon will probably want to get that in front of as many people as possible. As it's one of their biggest movies of the year. But if you're interested in Anora, there is like I said, a trailer out for that one already, and I think like Neon's plans are going to be like October for that one. For me, another one, Evan, that has a trailer out already is this movie called Conclave. And I was already on board based on the actors and the premise. But then when I learned out
Mhm.
the director is Edward Berger, who directed the recent adaptation of All Quiet on the Western Front that uh, almost dominated the Oscars the year it came out. Uh, I my interest became that much more higher. And this one stars Ray Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and Isabella Rossellini. And it's about, I guess, Ray Fiennes plays Cardinal Lawrence, and he's tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, and that is selecting a new pope. And the way the trailer plays out is all the political misdeeds and maneuvering that everybody tries to do, and it shows like how they all the Catholic Church's most powerful leaders are locked within the Vatican halls, and uh, he has to deal with all these conspiracies and things that could destroy the Catholic Church. And I don't know, this type of movie is like right up my bag. I mean, like it's might be like dry as hell, a lot of talking and like just actors being actors in rooms. But I seeing the trailer for this, I was like, I'm all in.
I mean, you had me at Ray Fiennes. I think he is incredible, and he can take a story a long way. I've really liked some of his recent performances. I mean, like you mentioned Bigger Splash, which is not a recent one,
Hmm.
but I thought he was great in that. I really liked him in the movie that came out with him and Jessica Chastain. What was the name of that? The Forgiven. Oh, he was so good in that. Um, Also thought he was great in The Menu, so I'm on board with this. The great cast, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and yeah, I mean, as somebody who was raised Catholic, and just kind of being aware of the secrecy around selecting a new pope, I think that does create some, a great setup for a thriller. And even if it is, like you said, people in rooms talking, I think there will be some intriguing conversations and dynamics going on in those rooms, especially with these people having those conversations.
Yeah, like there was another one a few years ago, which was like based on a true story, and then, like, it was the story of how, like, the one pope resigned. I think it was, like, Anthony Hopkins played him, and,
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh, popes don't resign, they serve until their death," and, like, how much drama that was, and, um, that movie was very talky. I think it's on Netflix, but I remember being, like, really fond of it and saying, like, thinking, like, what a good time I had watching it. Alright, some of the other stuff out there,
Here's one that wasn't on my radar that you had on the list, The End. Tilda Swinton, George McKay, Moses Ingram, and Michael Shannon. That's a pretty solid cast. I mean, I like Tilda Swinton. And I've seen George McKay in a few things at this point. I mean, he I thought he was good in 1917, but I also saw him in this movie called Femme that he was really good in. And I mean Michael Shannon, I always love him too. I think he's a very charismatic actor and he has a lot of range. And Moses Ingram too. I've seen her in a few things at this point. She was in the Obi-Wan series. She was also in Lady in the Lake, and I thought she was quite good in that, even though I was not a huge fan of the show itself. Um, and I mean, you usually get me with a post-apocalyptic movie. So, I mean, this one says it's a post-apocalyptic story about a rich family living in a salt mine converted into a luxurious home. The earth around them has apparently been destroyed, but their son has never seen the outside world. As a young girl appears in the entrance of the bunker, the balance of the family threatened. Yeah, that sounds like a great premise for a movie. These people who survive the apocalypse somehow, they have all these resources, quite likely, right? And then someone shows up, and it's the debate around whether they let this person in, whether they trust them, whether to share their resources or turn them away. I All that stuff I find fascinating. It's making me think of that movie that came out this in the last year with Julia Roberts and Mahershala Ali. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but
Yeah.
the yeah, I thought that was great too. A lot of like similar kind of themes going on there.
Yeah, and
Leave
s
the world behind. That's it.
okay. Yeah, and, the director, Joshua Oppenheimer, is most well known for his, dual, documentaries, The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence.
Oh,
Ye
it's that Joshua Oppine? Oh man,
Yeah.
I remember seeing the Act of Killing. Oof, oof, that is a brutal documentary. So good.
So good, but so brutal.
It
Uh
is. It's such a brutal. It's such a brutal subject, but so well done.
Yeah, so I figured with a pedigree like that, I would be really intrigued what he was going to pick up next, and that he has chosen this project to end as his next feature. I'm sure a lot of people will be looking into this film and with excitement.
Hmm.
Um, The one that I want to get to now, Evan, I think we might have talked about before, or at least it was talked about at the beginning of this year, and as an anticipated film, and that's Steve McQueen's Blitz.
Mm. Yep.
That's been named the opening night film at BFI, and I think it's either the centerpiece or the closing night film at the New York Film Festival. The New York Film Festival has a great relationship with Steve McQueen, having kind of premiered those. What were they, like, almost like
Small
TV
acts.
movies? Yes,
Yeah.
small acts. They premiered some of those during the pandemic at the film festival, and Blitz stars Saoirse Ronan and Harris Dickinson. Harris Dickinson was from the movie. Um, Triangle of Sadness, the Ruben Östlund film that was nominated for Best Picture a few years ago and won the Palme d'Or. Blitz is about World War II London, where 9-year-old George is evacuated to the countryside by his mother Rita to escape the bombings. Defiant and determined to return to his family, George embarks on an epic, perilous journey back home as Rita searches for him. Yeah, I I we haven't seen too much of Blitz, and I feel like it's almost been forever since I've seen Saoirse Ronan in something.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so
think the last thing I saw her was See How They Run, that Agatha Christie send up.
yeah, I heard about that. I didn't end up seeing it. I kind of felt like you mentioned Agatha Christie. I thought it was like it felt like a Knives Out also ran. Um,
Yeah, it definitely felt like it was trying to capture some of that magic, but did not do it with the same facility that Ryan Johnson has been able to do.
Yeah, and speaking of Ryan Johnson, a little off the side here, Evan, but he announced that his new Knives Out movie, I think it's called like Wake Up Dead Man or something, has finished production, and
Oh, sweet.
he's gonna start getting on post production work.
Well, I'm excited.
Oh, Evan, one of my favorite directors is Pedro Almodovar, and we did a we as in John and I, and we had a guest on at one point. Did an episode about his movies, and um, I love his work. And he has, I believe, his English language feature film debut with the movie The Room Next Door. This one
Oh, okay.
stars Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton and John Turturro, and it's going to be playing at Venice and TIFF, and it's also I wrote here this is the centerpiece of New York Film Festival, so I imagine Blitz is probably the closing night film. Um, but The Room Next Door, it says Ingrid, a best selling writer, rekindles her relationship with her friend Martha, a war journalist with whom she has lost touch with for a number of years. The two women immerse themselves in their past, sharing memories, anecdotes, art, movies. Yet Martha has a request that will test their newly strengthened bond.
Ooh.
Um, so, like, they've released the first like poster of this, Evan, and like it kind of gives uh Persona, the classic Ingmar Bergman movie kind of vibes. Um, I don't know if I'm just reading into that, but that's what I have to go on here. But yeah, I've just really enjoyed Almodovar's films. His use of color. Um, Sometimes it feels like they operate on like another plane of existence than ours, even though like they are here, and like they take these like telenovela roots to them, like they seem like totally outrageous at points. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
I just think they're awesome.
I'm not super familiar with his filmography, but I have seen Julieta and Parallel Mothers, and I thought Parallel Mothers really blew me away. I thought it was an incredible film. But I see what you're saying though about his kind of like striking use of color, because I remembered that film being Parallel Mothers being very vibrant. And I also remember, even though I wasn't really a fan of Julieta, I do remember its use of color also being very kind of striking from a visual perspective.
Yeah, I think my favorite one of his is All About My Mother. And then he had another one in recent years where his frequent collaborator, um what his name is escaping me now, the man who played Zorro,
Oh,
Antonio
Antonio Banderas?
yeah, Antonio Banderas almost plays like uh, a cipher of Pedro Almodovar, and like it's a very almost like biopic type of story of Almodovar's life, and that came out a few years ago, and I thought that was excellent as well.
Cool.
Um, you have something else for us, Evan?
Oh, I see Luca Guadagnino has a new movie
His
that's gonna
second
be at
this year,
Venice.
right? He had Challengers earlier this year.
Right, yeah, this one's called Queer. It looks like it has Daniel Craig, Leslie Manville, Jason Schwartzman. This says in 1950s Mexico City, William Lee, an American expat in his late 40s, leads a solitary life amidst a small American community. However, the arrival of Eugene Allerton, a young student, stirs William into finally establishing a meaningful connection with someone. Yeah, I feel like I generally like Luca Guadagnino's movies. I didn't see Challengers, but I've generally liked his other films, so I'm on board with this. I like Daniel Craig too. I think I don't know. I think he's more versatile than people give him credit for. Um, like a lot of people think of him as James Bond and more of kind of like a quiet type. But I think he has more range comedically. At least that's what I've observed from seeing the Knives Out movies and enjoying his performance in them so much.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Guadagnino's movies. The year that Timothy Chalamet came out a few years
Oh,
back,
yeah. Call Me by Your Name.
Call Me by Your Name. I was blown away by that movie. I loved
It was a
that.
good one.
And like Challengers, I thought was fantastic. I know you said you hadn't seen it yet. It's really good. I enjoyed Bones and All, even though I know some people didn't really enjoy that one.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, Bigger Splash we mentioned earlier. I think that one's pretty good. So like
Yep.
he tends to make movies that I enjoy. Um, so I'm excited to see what he does next year with Queer.
Mhm.
But Evan, we're running up against the end here, but there's of course other great films that are going to be playing at these festivals. Earlier this year at Cannes, and also playing at TIFF is this movie called "The Seed of the Sacred Fig." It is being distributed by Neon, and uh, I think it's almost as interesting for its story about how it made it out of uh, Iran, where the director kind of had to smuggle the film out in order to show it. Um, will be just as maybe the film will be even more interesting than that story. You should definitely look into that more if you haven't heard about it. There's a film called Bird, which is the new film by the director of American Honey, Andrea Arnold.
Mm.
This one stars Barry Keoghan and Franz Rogowitz, two great young actors, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. The opening night film at um, New York Film Festival's Nickel Boys, and I think that's the only place that's been announced that it's playing. Um, this one is based on a best-selling novel and has a terrific cast. And there's other exciting movies certainly coming out. I'd encourage anybody to look at the films announced for these festivals and explore them yourselves. Letterboxd, one of my favorite apps and websites. Some
Mhm.
users have made lists of the films premiering at these festivals, and you can explore them and the directors and the actors and what have you, and make a list of some of your most anticipated films of the fall festival, fall movie season. Evan, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a good mix of movies that are gonna be hitting the festival circuit. I'm sure, after some of the smaller ones debut and we hear more about them, there might be other ones that end up on our radar that we're trying to catch before the end of the year.
All right, wonderful. We're gonna transition into our what you've been watching section now, and before we do, we're gonna tell you how to find us. You can find me on X, on Blue Sky, MH Colville. I think on Blue Sky I'm now. It's the pictures.substack.com.
Yep.
Find me
Yes, you are.
there. You can find me there. We have a minor presence on Instagram. We have a minor presence on Letterboxd. If you're looking for us there, I've been doing a lot of work, Evan, on the YouTube page actually, and trying to get
Ooh.
the videos more views on there, making sure the tags are all filled out. So if you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, that's a great place to do it. Give us a thumbs up let people know that you like the podcasts, and other places like Spotify and Apple podcasts, and let people know that you enjoy the show.
Mhm.
Evan, where can they find you?
Let's see. So I am on Twitter, aka X. I am on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Letterboxd, and I'm Real Recon there. That's real as in film reel. And then you can also find me over each week on Spoiler Piece Theater, the weekly film review podcast.
All right, wonderful. Evan, I've been doing a lot of talking, so I'd love to hear what you've been watching.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm wrapping up on Succession season 3. I'm a little bit behind other people. I'm just kind of finally getting there. And I just witnessed the shit show that was Kendall's 40th birthday party. So that was something.
I love
I'm
that episode.
Oh man. Boy, was it an episode. There's been some really strong episodes in season 3. I've really been enjoying it and looking forward to wrapping it up and moving on to season 4. I know I'm behind the game, but yeah, man, I feel like things really heated up this season for me in terms of my interest in the show. I felt kind of like, I don't want to say lackluster, but I feel like the first 2 seasons I wasn't engaging super deeply on. I was just kind of like watching it A because everyone was talking about the show, and B kind of I was amused by the characters and their digs at each other. They
Yeah.
just say like the meanest, most horrible things to each other, uh, with usually riddled with curse words. So that's always funny. Yeah, I'm liking Succession season 3.
Yeah, it's funny, Evan. Like sometimes I feel like these prestige shows, like I feel that like maybe I have to watch them to be in on it and be in the conversation. Certainly Succession at first I felt that way, but like I was on board pretty like I think after the fifth or sixth episode of the first season I started watching it, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is good. So I was on board why it was airing and really enjoyed the hell out of it. I think for me, the one that's always been challenging, and I'm not afraid to admit it, was Breaking Bad. And why this I thought the show was always excellent and entertaining. I also thought it was really bleak, and I just I've never finished it. I've made it as far as the last season part the second part of it, first episode. Like like I probably have like 6 or 7 more episodes left of this damn show to watch.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I just have never felt the need to sit down and say, "Oh yeah, I just need to watch these 6 or 7 episodes and like see what happens."
Yeah. Well, it took me a long time to really get into Breaking Bad, but I have to admit, I think it's an incredible show. Um, and I actually really liked how they continued the story with their El Camino film that they put out on Netflix. But I'm actually more curious. Have you watched Better Call Saul at all?
No.
Okay. I'd be interested if you give Better Call Saul a try and you find it as gripping as I think most people do. I'd be interested if that then retroactively makes you want to go back and finish Breaking Bad because I feel like the stories are pretty intertwined, but I personally think that Better Call Saul is a stronger show and I feel like by watching it kind of like reinvigorated my interest in Breaking Bad. So um, definitely curious if you check that out, what you think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, well, now that the Olympics are off the air, I have a little bit more time to either catch up on movies or television. So we'll see what I actually end up doing.
Mhm.
The other night, I actually was playing a game on Super Nintendo from 1994. So
Ooh,
we'll
nice. What game?
Chrono Trigger. Uh,
Oh, I love Chrono Trigger. It's one of my favorite games. So
yeah,
good.
Yeah, I finally got like a good setup in my basement to like play like the actual cartridge of Chrono Trigger that I bought years ago, and like
Ooh.
I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play this for a little bit.
Mhm.
So but tell me about the movie that you talked about earlier, Night on Earth. I'm excited to hear
Oh
more.
yeah, sure. So yeah, I watched it for spoiler piece, but yeah, we were talking about wanting to see something with Gina Rollins in it. That wasn't The Notebook because we are like, oh god, The Notebook, and I was pretty fresh in my mind that I was like, well, I've already seen it, but I really don't care to talk about it. I feel like I kind of got all of my like anger out on on our show.
Yeah.
um So yeah, and I haven't really seen many Jim Jarmusch films. I've seen Patterson. Prior to this, I'd seen Patterson and Down by Law, and I actually really like both those movies. So I was like, okay, cool. I like anthologies. I like a couple Jim Jarmusch films that I've seen, and yeah, it's a series of vignettes about people who are riding in cabs in different cities. The first segment is in L.A. The second segment is in New York. The third segment is in Rome, and then it goes to Helsinki. I think I captured all of the different places that they go. I might have missed one in there, but yeah, the first segment it's in L.A. and it actually stars Winona Ryder and Gina Rollins. And Winona Ryder is kind of like a the best way I can describe her is a very kind of like tomboyish character. She's wearing like I think she's wearing like overalls and like smoking cigarettes and like she's driving a cab, but it's like a station wagon cab. And so she picks up Gina Rollins at the airport, and Gina Rollins is like a um she's a talent scout. She's a casting agent. And over the course of riding with Winona Ryder, who's kind of like a kind of like I don't want to say she's crude, but she's just kind of like she is who she is. She's like, I'm a cab driver, I want to be a mechanic. I have a very specific like plan for my life. um, they get to know each other a little bit, and Gina Rollins is actually kind of like, "Hey, I think you'd be great in a movie. Like, do you want to be in a movie?" And I won't give away the rest, but it's a good interplay because Gina Rollins plays this kind of like businessy. She's wearing like a black and white blazer, looking very professional, and it's just a really funny contrast to Winona Ryder and how she her kind of whole motif in the movie. But yeah, I dug it. I liked it. I think with any anthology film, there's almost always a weak link in the chain, so to speak. There's always like at least one segment that doesn't quite work as well. And I would say that's true for this movie, unfortunately. There's a segment with Roberto Benigni in Rome that I just hated.
you're like
Absolutely hated.
you're like, when's this one gonna be over?
Yes, and exactly. I was like, just kill me. This is just terrible. It's so painful. But otherwise, I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I would recommend it. I would recommend seeing Night on Earth.
No, it's funny, Evan. Like, I inadvertently have done like taxi esque movies lately because I guess like tax. Well, I don't guess. I know Taxi Driver and Michael Mann's Collateral. Both of those films have been released on 4K in the last 2 months, and I watched them both recently, and haven't seen both of them before. But I was just like, oh, it's funny, like these two like taxi movies, like the life of a taxi driver. Um, if you watch uh, Jamie Foxx as a taxi driver, though, it's a vastly different kind of atmosphere where a taxi driver actually becomes like a hero. Um,
Hmm.
but I love both those movies. It's been a while since I saw Collateral, and probably since it came out 20 years ago because this is celebrating the 20th anniversary, and I
Oh
always thought
damn.
I always thought it was like one of my favorite Michael Mann films. And while since Collateral came out, I've seen a lot more Michael Mann films that I probably prefer, whether or not it be like The Insider or Heat or
Yeah, for me, nothing is better than Heat.
yeah.
That's peak Michael Mann for me.
Um, yeah, I like those movies quite a bit. I mean, yeah, I even enjoyed Ferrari, even though it wasn't like his best work. Um, but Collateral is a lot of fun. But the two
Yeah.
movies I wanted to talk about that I also watched recently was staying on Gina Rollins. I watched her probably her most famous movie in her filmography, and that's A Woman Under the Influence. And this was directed by her husband John Cassavetes. And uh, I guess I looked up a lot about this movie afterwards. And originally Cassavetes imagined it as like a play, and Gina Rollins was like, I can't get into this part. Like, 5 days a week, twice on two matinees, 7 days a week, two matinees on like Saturday and like Friday or something. So
Mhm.
they were like, we're gonna like repurpose it for a movie. Cassavetes' longtime friend Peter Falk, who was um, on top of the world when of his TV show Columbo, uh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, he made time for this production, A Woman Under the Influence, and plays Gina Rollins' husband in the movie. Um, but it's a absolutely stunning performance by Gina Rollins. She's fantastic as a woman who's like, it seems like she's not only depressed, but she has some like manic attributes to her, but it just like no one knows how to help her. And she kind of acts out inappropriately at times. And Peter Falk's character very much has issues of his own, but his kind of vision of what I believe he wants his wife to be is like this perfect like housewife and only do things that he seems to think that she should do and act a certain way, and that's just not how she is or how she can be. And
Mhm.
um the beginning of the movie like shows like her kind of unraveling even more so in um her difficulties living her life and taking care of her children and her just interacting with people. And then she gets committed, and the movie fast forward 6 months later and like sees her coming home and sees if she's able to really adjust to this world that she's in. And it's really heartbreaking
Mhm.
as someone who's struggled with mental illness sometimes myself. I can see like uh watching her character struggle is really difficult to watch on screen. And um I think it's a terrific movie, and the acting and everything like that, and it definitely accomplishes what it meant to do. But I don't know if I have it in me to ever turn it on again. It's one of those.
It sounds pretty heavy, but it's one of those heavy movies that I've heard a lot, people talk a lot about over the years of being really good. So hopefully it was at least worth, the trip.
Yeah, because like I think there was a bunch of months ago, Evan, that I watched like the first 40 minutes of it, and I was like, I can't watch any more of this right now. It's too much for me. And then like I since she passed, I was like, I should go back to this and try to finish it, and I made
Mhm.
it through the end. And yeah, but another film that is kind of bizarre. It obviously has a lot of influences with David Lynch and Twin Peaks. Is this
Okay.
movie called The Beast? I guess it had a small theatrical run, and now it's available on the Criterion Channel because it's been released by Janus Films. It stars Leah Seydoux and George McKay, who we
Hey,
previously
we
talked
just
about.
talked about him.
Yeah, and it's this idea that like in the future, 2044, uh, Leah Seydoux's character kind of like wants a better job, and like AI is kind of taking over things, and they're like, if you cleanse your past lives from your like self, then we can like get you better job. And so there's like two different periods that they go to. One's like early 1900s where she goes to, and she's a piano player, and she's having an affair with a character played by George McKay. And they talk about that story for a little bit, and then about an hour and a half into the film, like they go into a future meeting between the two of them, and like how they have this connection between them because obviously they're fated to meet between these timelines.
Mhm.
And no, I mean it's a very weird movie, but it was um pretty entertaining as well. And I love Leah Seydoux and whatever she does, and if nothing else, it's totally worth watching for her performance in this.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember reading about this movie, like a review from one of the festivals from last year, and then it completely just fell off my radar. So I'm glad that you put it back on there.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's like period piece science fiction esque type of thing. It's it's kind of like all over the place. And like if you're familiar with like Lynch's like Mulholland Drive and stuff like that, and um, you'll kind of get the vibe that this movie's going for. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what we've been watching, and another great episode. Evan, thanks for doing the fall movie preview with me.
Yeah, of course. Glad I took the plunge.
Yeah, now maybe I and you and I both do the BOFCA thing and the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and we're gonna start seeing some of the buzz around these movies come out. And I don't know, it's
Mhm.
it's helpful to even get some of them on our radar and help with the stacks of movies. They famously send us like 90 to 100 different movies that we have to put on, and um, it's good to have which ones to kind of prioritize.
Yep. Need a short list, otherwise you're never gonna make it.
All right, Evan. Well, thanks once again, and we'll talk to everybody in 2 weeks' time.
Yep. See you next time.
All right, thank you. Bye.